ask the question, pain. There is no electrician to turn on the lights. There is no jailer to unlock the door. Heaven is a place where there is no need for a fireman to put out the fire. There is no need for a doctor to ease the pain. There is no need for an electrician to turn on the lights, for God is the light. And there is no need for a locksmith because the doors have no locks. Heaven is better than anybody's ever told you it is because nobody can say it. Hell is worse than anybody's ever told you it is because nobody can express it. Now, none of us likes to hear that word hell. I don't even like to say it. I don't like to preach about it. But you know, a doctor doesn't like to say the word cancer, does he? But sometimes it's necessary to say it. You know, it does no good to ignore reality because it just compounds the problem. But to deal with reality, to say that God is holding out the life preserver today to save us from our own sins, take us to heaven, don't reject it because the rejection is worse than drowning. It's something that, you know, drowning is over after a short amount of time, but hell is never over and heaven is never over. So these are eternal verities. Now, let's go into the scriptures and start in Acts 9, and we will examine just 3 places today. Actually, I'm going to change. Let's go to Acts 16. I'll come back to Acts 9. We're going to talk about Acts 9 in detail Monday night, tomorrow night. But let's go to 16. Then we will stop at 9 at the end of our sermon. But let's go to 16. The question, there is one book in your Bible that deals with what to do to be saved. It's not the book of Psalms. It's not the book of Revelation. It is the book of Acts. There are 28 chapters there. There are 9 examples, case studies of how to be saved from sin. People that were lost who became saved. And there are different demographics. Everybody can find himself or herself somewhere in the combination or in a perfect matchup with one of those different conversion studies. Now we're going to observe that the question, what must I do to be saved, was asked only 3 times in the book of Acts. And each time a different answer was given. And that's a curiosity because God's no respecter of persons. Would he require more of one person than he does of another, less of one than he does the other? No. So it has to do with where a person is when he asks the question. Let me illustrate this. I did not come here straight from Memphis. That's where I live. I was in Mayfield. So I don't know if I get all these places right, but you'll get the point. Here we go. So if I were in Memphis and asked, how do you get to Stanford, Kentucky? Well, I suppose they would say you go to Jackson, and the way I came anyway, through Mayfield, and then you come across and you get to Danville, and you're pretty close, right? Okay, I asked that in Memphis, and I, put that in my mind. And then I get to Jackson, and I stop, fill up with gas, and I ask the attendant, how do you get to Stanford, Kentucky from here? And they say, well, you go back to Memphis, and then you come to Jackson, and you go to Mayfield, and then you go to Danville, and then you'll come to Stanford. I go to Mayfield, I pull off and get something to eat, and I ask the girl at the counter, how do you get to Mayfield? You know where that? Oh, yeah, my grandmother lives in Stanford. I'll tell you how to get. You go to Memphis, and then you go to Jackson, you come back through Mayfield, and then you go to Danville. Is that what they're going to say? No, it's according to where you are when you ask the question. The same thing is true on the road to salvation. There are 3 different answers given because the people who were asking the questions were at 3 different positions on the road to salvation. We're starting in Acts 16 because Acts 16 is the farthest away. It's the Memphis of the Memphis to Stanford, Kentucky analogy. Let's look in Acts 16. So Paul and Silas have crossed over into Europe and preached the gospel there for the first time in Philippi, which is a port city. It's also a colony. Roman soldiers retire there, and it's a place where they could quickly be brought back into service if uproar or tumult happened in that region. And so Paul goes there to preach, and he gets arrested. He gets beaten on his back with stripes. They put him in the inner prison in stocks. Very uncomfortable to spend the night in stocks, especially with a back that's just been beaten with a whip. So they can't sleep, so they're singing. And you can read about that, verse 25. And at midnight, Acts 16:25, Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God. I wonder if they prayed what Jesus prayed. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I suppose that's similar to what Stephen prayed in Acts 7, isn't it? Lay not this sin to their charge. I wonder about that, but I know that they prayed. Maybe that the Lord will be glorified and they would not sin in this extreme circumstance. But at any rate, they prayed and they sang praises. I wonder what songs they sang. Maybe glad to suffer, for worthy to suffer for his name. They didn't have that song then, but something similar to it. Praise, thanksgiving to God to be able to be served. I don't know, but they sang. And when you sing, people hear you, right? So they're inside the prison in the dark, but they're singing, and I suppose their song went through the prison, and evidently the jailer had heard it too. So let's read about the jailer. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundation of the prison was shaken, and immediately all the doors broke open. Can you picture that? They weren't the only prisoners in there. There were other prisoners who were locked behind the door, but all the doors broke open so that people could leave. And everyone's bands were loose. So the stocks that their hands, perhaps their feet were in, they broke open too. So they were able to stand up and walk right out if they wanted to. So the guard has been asleep. I'm not sure if he was supposed to be asleep, but he was asleep. And the keeper of the prison, awaking out of his sleep and seeing the prison doors open, so he wakes up, man, what's happening? And wipes his eyes. Oh, no. Oh, the door's open. The door is open. Now, under that government, if you let a prisoner go, you had to take the punishment that he was due. So he just let a whole prison full of prisoners go. So they're going to take his life. And he decides that he will fall on his sword. He will commit suicide, take his own life. Maybe that has to do with if he were discharged, then his family would receive no pension, no retirement. But if he died in the line of duty, which technically he would be if he died at his own hand, they would have received it. So maybe that's what he's thinking. But at any rate, Paul stops him, calls out of the darkness. Maybe he can see out into the light. He sees what he's about to do. And so he says, Paul cried with a loud voice, verse 28, saying, do thyself no harm. That's a really good principle to remember. We've got young